Hey guys, my name's Steve Guttenberg. That guy over there, his name is Spencer. So you're an artist.
Yeah.
And have you always lived in such beautiful places?
Not always, but sometimes.
Lately.
There have been times, yeah.
But you just moved in here, right?
Yeah, I moved in about a month and a half ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we were supposed to do this whole video a ways back.
At,
you said, oh,
at my
I'm
last
moving.
place,
At your last place, right?
Yeah, and that was a special place, and I was excited to have you over there because of the way that the sound system was set up in the studio, but I couldn't stay. I had to go.
Well, life in New York.
Yeah.
But before we get too far into it, I want to explain to the viewers out there that behind you there are Magnepans. They're 3.7s.
These are the MG20s.
MG20s.
Yeah.
Oh, the place is so big. They look.
Yeah. No, these are the MG20s.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you're not using them yet. You're going to hook them up. You're just working that out.
Yeah. I'll be bi-amping them with those Mark Levinson numbers over there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that'll be nice. And that's the way I had it set up in my last studio, and it sounded so great. Yeah.
But you're going to have that system set up behind you.
Yes.
And then I'll put pictures up of this system that's in front by the fireplace here. And so you're going to have both systems set up on opposite sides.
Yeah. Well, I set this up here with the Dynaco ST70 just to get the music going, because that was the easy one.
Right.
This one I need to wire over the doorway and do all this stuff. I just didn't have the right cable and all this stuff. So that's, I kind of set it up. That's where I want to place the speakers and the amps. Okay. I'm happy with that. And I'll hook it up. And then but I'll also have the Fulton speakers going on this side and the Maggies over here.
Oh, not these.
Yeah,
not these JR149.
Not the JR1. No, not the 149s. But Dig, I was thinking maybe I'll keep like this small, tube amp here with the JR149s. Yeah. And maybe that'll be something that I could use when I want to, or I could switch over to the Maggies and the Fultons.
Yeah.
Just have a couple, two different sounding systems. Yeah.
They're very different sounding systems.
Yeah.
Wow. So. Here's the tricky question. I'm just kidding. So how or why did you become an audiophile?
Well, I've always been, I come from a musical family. So my parents, my mother, my father, my extended family, all musicians at certain levels. And so I grew up around a piano. And so there's that part. And then as I entered my early adolescence, I walked down the street to the hi-fi store when I was living with my mother. Yeah, at my mother's house in Chestnut Hill, Philadelphia. The place was called Community Audio on Germantown Avenue. And I walked down to the store. I had some money, I'd saved up. So so I was like, what do you, I want some speakers, And I had my father's, he had an old Pioneer, integrated amp receiver thing, And so I had that, but I wanted some special speakers, And the guys sold me some of the large Advents.
Okay.
And so
good
that was,
start.
and yeah, it was a good start, right? Yeah. And they sounded amazing, So I brought them home, I set them up. And I bought a CD player. It was kind of when CD players first came out, And so I think I had like this Fisher CD player or something like that, And that was it. But I kind of fell in love with those speakers, and I listened to a lot of music over those speakers, and I really felt, and I still think about that sound a lot. So I'm still kind of thinking about the sound from those speakers.
You should just
to this day.
You should get
I've had them. They've come and gone, and I have different ones, but yeah.
Well, I get that, but it's that thing about, pardon the expression, you're first, right?
Yeah, sure.
It's your first. So it's such a big deal to have your first, nice speaker system that in your memory, it's like, oh, I got so much pleasure, so much joy out of listening to music when I was 16 or 18 or whatever it was. And I'm like jumping around listening to fill in the blank. Yeah. Can I get back to that?
Yeah.
No, not really. But
well, yeah. Well, it's a first time thing, and the first time that you've heard recorded music sounding that good is it's often something you're looking to get back to.
Yeah, I know. But the thing that you get And I love it when viewers in comments point out, I'm 50, my hearing isn't what it used to be, or I'm 70, and my hearing. You know what? That's true. But the thing is, you know more.
Right.
You're hopefully smarter and a better listener. So you're not hearing 20K anymore, or 15K maybe, but you know more. So it's okay that your hearing isn't as good. You can appreciate music on more levels as you age than you did when you were 16.
Right.
So you get overall, I think you're ahead of the game when you're older, even with less.
Even if your hearing is not what it used to be, you're still gathering more information every time you listen to something.
Right.
Yeah. And there's certain things. Certain experiences are kind of these rites of passage, like what's the first record you ever bought with your own money?
Right.
There's something like that,
right.
So that's almost like a coming of age type of thing, you know?
Yeah.
Because I remember mine was, the experience, the journey was that my uncle, I used to visit him every summer, and he would take me out once a year and buy me a toy. And it was a big thing that, it was a big deal every summer, So there was one summer where we were going to the toy store, and I said, actually, can we go over to We 3 Records, And he's like, oh, yeah, went there. And I had seen in like Cream magazine something about Lou Reed being the godfather of punk or something. And so I go over to the Lou Reed bin, and I see, Mick Rock's photo on Transformer of Lou Reed, and I was like, well, this has got to be the one.
This is it.
And it was the one.
You picked good.
Yeah.
You picked good. What a great record.
Yeah. So, there's things like that. And then, okay, yeah. I had a Techniques turntable. Yeah.
Oh, from the beginning.
I'm sorry?
From the beginning.
Yeah, on that first system that I set up for myself, I think it might have been my brother's turntable at one point, but it was a Techniques.
Oh, great.
And I don't remember the model number, but it wasn't a 1200. It was, yeah. So anyway, I had a Techniques turntable. And so I remember listening to records and finding I remember really clearly the Peter Tosh record, Mystic Man. And I remember, laying that down and hearing that over the Advents and just being completely blown away. And then looking at Ann Leibowitz's photo of him riding a unicycle down the street on the back, and being like, wow, yeah, this is good. So that's a very clear memory to me. Wow. Yeah.
But so when did you start playing guitar?
Oh, I started guitar pretty young, when I was a kid. Yeah. Took a couple lessons, didn't stick with the lessons, but continued to play guitar.
To this day.
To this day.
A bunch of guitars here.
Yeah. I've been collecting, and then during lockdown, some more guitars gravitated into my work.
Makes sense. So when you're listening, it's how the musicians are playing, their chops, their skills, their sense of rhythm, and whatever. Yeah. You're hearing that over the Maggies or the JRs, and how does that change for you? That's clumsily asked, but that's what.
How does that? How does what change?
So how does the system, whether you're listening on Maggies or the JR 149s, how does that change the way you hear that?
Okay.
See, when I listen, I'm listening as a total civilian. I'm just listening to music. I'm not thinking about.
You're not thinking about the ability level of the musician or their decision making as far as how they play and how that feels. Okay. Well, okay. So I mean, that can change. Okay, so the other day I was at my studio and I had some Maggies over there with I'm just like it's a MC Macintosh 2300 solid state, and then I have the Maggies, which are the next size down from these.
Okay. 3.6s or something.
Yeah. And then I had a sub behind that, and it's a great sounding setup. But then I tested out these other speakers that I bought on a whim because I liked the way they looked.
Okay.
And they weren't expensive.
And what are they?
They're called Quebec speakers.
Oh yeah, you were asking.
Yeah. I wrote to you about this.
I mean.
Yeah. Oh, they're beautiful. And I thought, oh, these would look so great in the studio. And I was checking out the pics, and it seemed like a very carefully considered design of the cabinet. Right. And I said, I don't think these are going to sound bad. you know. So I went ahead.
And
They weren't expensive, right? And it's a much different sound, you know. It's a much different sound. It sounds good. It sounds very good. It's not as wide, you know, but I'm noticing the bass. The bass. There's a certain level of detail in the bass coming from these 8-inch drivers, you know, in those cabinets, that I can really hear the way that the bassist is playing this bass line. He's just hitting it with his fingers like this at that level of, you know, punch and whatnot. So it's actually, you know, I'm able to pick up on these details from through these kind of 8-inch drivers, like, you know, giving me this bass, giving me that signal that wasn't so noticeable in the wider kind of broader setup. Yeah, on the Maggies with the sub. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah.
Well, that's why you have more than one pair of speakers.
What?
That's why you have more than one pair of speakers.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's great. I'm so glad I asked that question and you put it that way. Because there's got to be differences, you know. I mean, it just is. I mean, as I said, not just listening as an audiophile, which is basically about beauty and connection and engagement. That's how I'm listening.
Right.
But you're listening like that with this extra dimension, let's say.
Yeah.
You're listening to how they're playing with each other. The musicians are playing.
How that musician was playing that bass.
Yeah.
You know, at what kind of like level he was at what strength he was hitting the strings with, and in what way. You could tell they're hitting it with different parts of their fingers and stuff like that. You know, and so you could really hear it on the. And it's not that it was missing on the other setup, but it was somehow more pronounced from these different shapes, speakers. You know,
I have it.
These are the best, like in my opinion, to my liking. The MG20s are the best because it's just it's like you can walk into the music.
Wall of sound.
Yeah.
I mean, size matters.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to do a video soon where I'm going to talk about that. A well-designed speaker, a well-designed small speaker versus a well-designed large speaker. Let's say more or less of comparable price. The large speaker will always sound better.
Right.
Better meaning, well, bigger, more life-size, more dynamic.
More dynamic, exciting.
Better bass extension. In almost every way, the bigger speaker, and I'm stating that these are both well-designed, like one's not crappy and one's good. No, they're both really good, let's say. The bigger speaker will always sound better.
Yeah.
Better in the ways that I just said.
Years ago, when I had enough money to start seeking out musical equipment, I found a pair of Scalas, and they were gorgeous. They were the raw birch.
Oh, nice.
Beautiful. They look like Donald Judd sculptures. I mean, they're just the most beautiful cabinets, you know. And I noticed the same thing right away. Of course, you can go loud, you know, ear-splittingly loud with those things, but listening to them very quietly is a beautiful experience too. Yeah, that's a great speaker. And so when I was living in this loft on Ludlow Street, and at a certain time I had to start having rent parties, and so we would do dance parties, and so I set up this system. You know, the corner horns are famous for being used by David Mancuso in the loft, his dance parties, the loft parties. Okay. And so I didn't have the corner horns, but I thought I could try to, like, you know, get something close to that, set up something that might be close, you know, because, you know, having it be like human-sized, you know.
Yes.
And to have that relationship of it. So I just had some JBL subs, some big ones, and then I put the Scalas on top of, just stacked them on top of the JBL subs, and then on top of that I had some JBL tweeter, and I just you know, bypassed the, you know, because I wanted to try the sound for a dance party. I wanted booming bass, and I wanted some aggressive highs too, you know, and the mids are no problem. But it was good. It was good, man. People were dancing and getting down to that.
I bet. The first clips I ever heard was La Scala.
Yeah, they're great.
In a big loft.
Yeah.
And it was one of those life-changing moments.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I had never heard anything like that.
Right.
You know, that fantasy, and it is a fantasy, and it'll always be a fantasy, that it sounds like live music, right? That the La Scala was giant steps closer to live music.
Yeah.
So it really changed my life to hear those
Yeah.
speakers. And it was a friend of mine, so I heard him many times, and it was a really, really, really big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and another great thing about Klipsch is that they're still doing it, you know?
Yeah, they're still doing it.
They're still making great speakers.
And they still make them in Arkansas.
And so they make them in Arkansas. Yeah. And they seem to be like, you know, they seem to do, like, people buy them. They're in the game, you know, they're relevant still, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah. I mean, so many of my viewers tell me they have Cornwalls. It's kind of incredible.
Yeah.
They're not inexpensive speakers, and they're big. Like, you know, wouldn't fit in a lot of people's lifestyle, but they're there, you know. So
yeah, I started with some heresies, and when I heard those, I knew that there was something going on, you know.
So I think part of what audiophiles, this fantasy of hearing music sound live, I think part of it is you have to play it really loud, because live music, even if it's unamplified live music, is still loud.
Yeah.
I mean, an orchestra is loud.
It's loud,
you know?
yeah.
I mean, if somebody without an amplifier plays a trumpet, it's freaking loud.
Yeah.
I mean, drums are really loud.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you want it to be real, then play it with, you know, without upsetting your neighbors or something. Where possible, play it as loud as you can take it, you know, without it distorting, of course. But, you know, and then you'll have some idea of where you are, you know, as an audiophile in terms of real. If that's the fantasy, you might actually be closer, you know, to having what you say you want it to sound real than you imagine if you've never played it loud. When I say loud, I mean, you know, 95 dB, 100 dB loud.
Right.
So for at least a little bit, you know, 5 minutes or something, just to see.
Yeah.
And you're an artist.
Yeah.
You paint.
Paint, yeah, I do paintings.
So do you think painting and being an audiophile, how do they relate at all?
Totally. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I feel better. Stupid question if not.
No, they do. Yeah, I mean, I'm almost always listening to music while I'm painting. So it's just a constant, you know? And then every once in a while, if I really want to blow my own mind, I'll turn off the music and work without music. And I'm like, oh my God, I can hear what's going on in the street outside. This is amazing, you know? Yeah, and that happens so rarely, because I never think to do that. But every once in a while, it might happen, because maybe I'll be like working all night, and it'll be like 5 a.m., and I'll just be like, okay, no music.
Chill.
And then I'll just be like, wow, I'm just hearing these like incidental noises that might be happening.
It's very John Cage over there. Wow.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So there is a similarity, you know, because with your painting, any art you get involved with or activity, and it could be something like, you know, painting, cooking, writing. It could be playing golf. It could be some athletic activity or something like that. You're always thinking on different ways that you can angle this. What about this? What if I change the way I'm standing like this? Or what if, and with materials, like, oh, well, what if I add this dryer to this and then mix these, you know, so with listening to music, it's the same thing. You're constantly playing around. You want to try, you know, different combinations and setups, and just change the sound and observe it.
The equivalent of mixtapes?
I do, yeah. In fact, I can share, I did one for the gallery that I show with. They asked me to do a playlist. Yeah. Yeah, and then mixtape. I grew up making mixtapes.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. And that's a special thing too. Oh, Jesus. Because really, when you think about, when you listen to your friends' mixtapes, I still have a lot of mixtapes that friends have given to me, you know. And, you know, it's so revealing about that person's character and their mind and their soul, really. It's like the trip, you know.
Yeah.
And you think about how much you learn when you know somebody and they give you a mixtape. You learn so much about them.
Yeah.
It becomes like a little trip through their personality, you know. Yeah. And it's such a beautiful way of expressing it, you know.
So Spencer, you and I really love radio, but you actually had a radio show. You were a DJ.
Well, when my brother was in college in Philadelphia, I would often jump into his slot. Oh. He would allow me to, you know, and so that was really fun. And so I would make tapes. I have a couple of tapes of the shows. I mean, I didn't do an awful lot of them, but I did some, and I loved doing it. And then when I moved to New York City, I became a DJ. And I was DJing in bars and clubs.
Ah.
Yeah, and just because I'd always collected records, you know, for as long as I can remember. I kind of inherited my mother's and father's records, so they were always there. And then I started just collecting my own. And so when I moved to the city, I needed a job. You know, I was working at a video store, and what I had records. So I just started throwing these parties and DJing, and I did it for a living for over a decade. Yeah.
So in your loft space, you just
well, there was those ones, but this was before I lived in a loft. I had a tiny little closet on Water Street.
Welcome to New York.
Yeah, like no windows. So no, I would just go to. I actually started just by I would go into a bar that I thought had a special character to it, and I would say, hey, do you think that could I take a Tuesday night here? Bring my turntables over, and or you might have to help with setting up the gear. I'll bring my records over and invite some friends, and I started that way, and then I started DJing at actual clubs, bigger clubs, and then I eventually opened my own nightclub.
Woo.
Yeah, which was that was a real experience there.
Right.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so I opened my own nightclub, and the journey for into sound continued, and it was our motivation was to put together the best sound system we possibly could for live and dance music. You know. For club music and live shows, live music venue, and then to add that to the most diverse programming we could possibly put together, and that was the vision for the club, and it was there for 10 years. So we're just talking about at certain moments when you're painting, and you're at the end of your rope, thinking that this is it for me, this is over, you know. Sometimes a piece of music might come along that'll just like save your life, basically, you know.
Give me an example.
Okay, so a couple summers ago, late night, things are going horribly, man, and I'm just lost, you know. The gig is up, basically, is what I'm thinking. And then some doo-wop comes on, and all of a sudden I'm like, God, it's like the Flamingos or something. And I'm listening to this doo-wop, you know, it's 5 o'clock in the morning or something, and I've been bashing my head up against the wall all night, and this doo-wop comes on, and I was like, what is this music, you know? And it's just from another universe, what is this, you know? And it saved my life. It gave me, it gave me, you know, the strength just to keep going, but it just inspired me. This doo-wop. I'll never forget that night. You know,
wow!
And I love doo-wop music. Now I do. It had never hit me. Like I was aware of it, but I fell in love with it that night, and because it saved my life too.
So Spencer, this has been absolutely incredible. I really enjoy talking to you. This has been fantastic.
I'm so psyched to have you here. I've been watching your program and I love it. You know, I've been getting so much from it.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's so much content. I mean, you're turning it out, you know.
Yeah.
It's cool. There's so many good stories, so many good personalities. You learn so much, of course, about the actual equipment, and then I do my research from there. And so yeah, I get a lot from it, you know.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
And we will continue.
Well, you know, the one thing I wanted to bring up before I forget is that when we first chatted on the phone, you asked me if I was an audiophile.
Yes, I always say it's a trick question.
Yeah, he said, let me ask you a question. Are you an audiophile? I was like, well, I don't think. And then, so anyway, I've come to the conclusion that I am. But at that point, when you asked me, I hadn't really considered, I've never really thought of asking myself that question. But when Mike Trey, it was that Lynn, the LP12, and I needed a new motor. And Mike Trey was the guy who I called. And
Mr. Turntable Setup.
Yeah. So he set it up for me, and he replaced the motor. And so when this was at the Carriage House, and he was looking around at my equipment, and he was like, "Are you an audiophile?" And I was like, well, I don't know. And then he's looking around and he was like, oh. He's like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, you're an audiophile. So, yeah. I'm a Mike Trey approved audiophile.
And now an AUDIOPHILE I've approved audiophile.
Yeah, okay.
Even better.
Wow.
Wow. Well, yes. A lot of times when I say to people, "Are you an audiophile?" I usually say it's kind of a trick question.
Yeah, yeah.
Because audiophiles usually don't say that they're audiophiles.
Right.
They say, "No,
Yeah.
I like music."
Right, but
it's a defensive thing.
Yeah,
no,
sure.
I'm not a nerd. I like music.
Right, right.
Okay. You're a nerd.
Well, the first thing that I said, my first answer to your question was that I've been called an audiophile before.
That's a different kind of answer. It's a kind of a yes or no.
But that was a joke. That was kind of a bit of a joke.
Okay, well.
Anyway.
That's fantastic. Well, all right. We will continue.
All right, let's go over there.